want people to be competitive, but you have to make the decision what services you need to be competitive on. What are the services that really matter to your customer where they're going to be looking at the aftermarket?
You can be half the price as your competition, and if a customer has a poor customer service experience at your dealership, they're not coming back.
Welcome to Retention Roadmap, navigating service success for new car dealerships. Today, I'm excited to introduce two guests who bring deep expertise and valuable insights to the world of automotive service pricing. Joining us are Joe Gibson, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Intelichek, and Melissa Marlatt, Intelichek's Chief Operating Officer. Intelichek is a leader in providing competitive intelligence and market pricing data that helps new car dealerships stay ahead of their markets. Their solutions offer real-time insights into pricing trends, empowering dealerships to make informed decisions that enhance service competitiveness and ultimately improve customer retention. So Joe and Melissa, great to see you again and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Bill.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming. We all know the pricing is so important in finding the right balance between maximizing customer retention and maximizing dealership profits. So, I'd really like to just get right into it. And why don't you start, if you would, can you briefly explain how competitive intelligence services work and how they can help new car dealerships really enhance their service offerings?
Yeah, for sure. I can handle that one. I think in like a nutshell, competitive intelligence is really what it comes down to. It's like data, knowledge, any kind of wisdom even that helps you compete. What helps you get the edge on the competition? So for example, competitive intelligence could be anything data related that gives you insight into, your dealership, your service department, how you're comparing to the competitors. So it can be as simple as like just knowing who your competitors really are. So that sounds very simple, but I think there's more to it than you even realize. If you're a Ford or a Chevy dealer, you might, and we had these conversations actually, you might think that your competitors are other Ford and Chevy dealers. You might be thinking, okay, that's my competitor. And, for sales, yeah, for sure, that's true. There's used cars and all that, but, for the most part, that's true. But on the fixed ops side of things, we sometimes see that they still think that that's the case, but that's not really the case, I would argue. So, I think that, for things like oil changes and tires, your customers, they aren't going to the other dealer, they're going to the aftermarket. So just right there, you need that intelligence to know, okay, who are my competitors? And then on top of that, what are their prices? What is the day's wait to get into service? All that is information that, gives you the intelligence to make decisions. When it comes to setting up what your service offerings are, what the prices are, you need competitive intelligence to make decisions that are informed, that are going to set you up in a positive way in your market. So essentially, that's how I would describe it.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that if any of us who have taken an introductory economics class, I think on the first day of class, they show you that demand versus price curve. And it's this straight line that says the higher the price, the less the demand. But that just, unless you've got a pure commodity, that really just isn't true. And I think automotive service pricing certainly falls into that category of it's really not a commodity. And so capturing not only price, but those other factors that come into play in terms of value-added services that really a dealership can compete effectively on, as well as needs to know what their competitors are doing, I think are really key.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So going back we'll start out with pricing. What are some of the most common pricing challenges dealerships face, when trying to stay competitive in their service market or checking their competitiveness in their local service market?
Yeah, when I talk to dealers, there seems to be such a wide range of challenges that make them feel like they can't be competitive, from technology advances, vehicles becoming more complex, the cost of training technicians and keeping technicians and acquiring the specialized tools are a big overhead for them. They've got part pricing, trying to stay competitive with the aftermarket, while they're trying to offer higher quality, more expensive parts than the aftermarket is. You got increase in warranty and recall work lately. It's taking up bays and technicians, which are already in a shortage, and it's not allowing them the ability to bring on the volume of the maintenance services to keep the prices lower. And then you have the fluctuation in the market. They don't have the time to analyze and pay attention to the trends, which is really becoming a challenge for them to stay competitive. But we're finding dealers are still competitive. They just don't realize it. And in the case that they can't be, they just need to take the time to educate the customer to the benefit of paying a higher rate price because of dealer quality and OE parts.
Mhm.
For sure. Yeah, that's obviously one of the, if the biggest advantage that dealerships have is their OEM parts,
Mm-hmm.
training facilities, and that type of thing. No doubt about it.
But
I'm
there's
curious.
quality.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There's quality there, right? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, when last year, about 18 months ago, we did our 2023 service retention study and asked a number of questions about pricing. And it was, we really asked two key questions. And the first one was, how important is price when deciding where to take your vehicle for service? And price came in number three, behind quality of work, number one, and quality of customer service, number two. And then price was third. And interestingly, we also asked the question, what might cause you to go somewhere else for service? And price actually came in as number two, specifically lower price came in at number two behind a bad experience at the dealership. And I take that information a little bit lightly because I think that oftentimes price becomes a proxy for other issues that occurred, perhaps from a customer service standpoint or even a service scheduling standpoint at the dealership. And I'm curious in terms of how you're able to perhaps on behalf of the dealer parse out those differences between and what's really a price issue and what's really another issue that the dealership may be having with respect to being competitive in their marketplace.
In addition to pricing, there are other factors obviously that drive their loyalty. Customer service, you mentioned that it's the biggest one, right? A positive customer service experience can make or break you. It doesn't matter what your price is. If they have a poor experience at your dealership, they're
Yeah,
not going to come back,
100%.
right?
So, in addition to pricing, what other factors do you see driving customer loyalty specifically to a dealership service department?
Yeah, well, like we just said, customer service is a big one, right? You can be half the price as your competition, and if a customer has a poor customer service experience at your dealership, they're not coming back. Trust and confidence. They have customers return when they know their vehicles are in expert hands and when they trust you. So having clear communication about your services and pricing builds confidence and trust. Overall, it's about a trusted relationship and delivering consistent value.
One of the things that I saw recently that frankly surprised me was the rise in vehicle maintenance inflation over the last couple of years. And I'm curious if you're seeing that in the data that you're collecting on behalf of your dealership clients, and what role kind of that market intelligence plays in really anticipating those shifts in customer behavior, and how can dealers use this information to stay ahead and really retain more customers as well as make sure that their pricing is reflective in terms of what's appropriate in the marketplace and what's appropriate with their cost structure.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that a little bit. There is, yeah, a shift there. I mean, we're seeing it. There's, we were talking to someone the other day just about this, how the trends, there's a bigger gap, I think, that we're seeing between some of the pricing that we're getting from dealership versus aftermarket. The gap is growing there, so it is a difficult thing. So obviously tracking that and seeing where, certain services are you're less competitive on, and then you have to make the decision whether or not those services are the ones that you want to be promoting to your customer. Are those the services that you're losing customers on? So I think it's really important. Like I like to say, competitive pricing, it's what we're all about. We want people to be competitive, but you have to make the decision what services you need to be competitive on. What are the services that really matter to your customer where they're going to be looking at the aftermarket? So to me, that's oil change, that's, tires, that's air conditioning services. I think that if you can at least focus on those and use that as part of your marketing, part of your promotion. So, other services, maybe more in-depth services that you're getting done, I think the customer will understand when they come in that there is, a price premium for having that kind of specialized work done. But for an oil change, I don't see the reason for a dealer to be so outrageously high. I think that there can be decisions made there to not be the lowest, but to be competitive. And this is something that we see from customers. Like we've done studies with customers where, they're willing to spend more than the local average to go to a dealership because they do understand the benefits. And I think that it all comes down to the messaging that we've been talking about. What are you getting to justify that price? And if you can explain that to your customer, then up to 20% usually, beyond that, maybe you aren't competitive and that's where you are losing people. So I think that if you have those benchmarks in place to look at, certain services, this is important. We might get more services bringing somebody into an oil change. Obviously that's a great opportunity to do a multi-point inspection and see what else is going on with the vehicle. So you have to think about it strategically. I think that's really how dealerships need to be anticipating these things and also just, making smart business decisions to handle this because it's true. There is a gap and sometimes it is very difficult for dealers. As Melissa, you said, with the part prices and how those are going up and just how do you compensate for that. So yeah, but obviously I think intelligence on those services, on those competitors, knowing the market shares, all of that is just essential for dealers.
Joe, you brought up tires, and I'd like to pivot to the conversation about tires because as we all know, tires are a real point of defection for vehicle owners from dealerships. And we found that there's just surprisingly not a high level or a high enough level of awareness among most vehicle owners that the dealer sells tires and is truly the best source for tires. So talk to us a little bit about, the importance that competitive tire pricing plays for dealerships in their success, not only selling tires, but retaining more customers in this area.
Yeah, I'll speak to that again a little bit. I think that it's a huge missed opportunity, really, for dealerships. I think that they're not taking advantage of that market for a large part because, really, you think about it, every car, like from a Chevy Silverado to your EVs, your BMW M3, they're all going to need tires. And sometimes they're going to need tires multiple times throughout the vehicle's lifetime. So I think you could look at most reports out there and see that dealers are consistently losing market shares to the aftermarket on tires. But, does it have to be that way? And really, again, I think it comes down to explaining this to the customer because there seems to be this perception out there that dealers aren't the place to go for a tire. And I'll use one little anecdote here because I was having a conversation with somebody who owned a BMW. And I thought this was very interesting because, they had a recall recently. There's no question. They're going back to the dealership to get that done. They had an oil change coming up and they were like, oh, go to the dealership, And that, like as we were saying, oil change is sometimes where people go and, defect to an aftermarket because pricing or what have you. But, BMW is a little bit more of a luxury vehicle. They felt like they were in good hands going to the dealership. But then tires, it was like, nope, not the dealership. They had their eye on a tire specialist, but the tire specialist was even 20 minutes away from where they lived. So they were willing to go that far out of the way to go somewhere else that rather than the dealership, even though they were somewhat loyal to the dealership. So the issue there is the dealer was not doing a great job of communicating the value of getting the tires done at the dealership. And, I think that there are some dealers that maybe don't go into tires as much, but you have to look at the market and see that there's an opportunity there. There's no reason that dealers can't offer the same, tires as somewhere else. And they probably have, again, better customer service than most places. They have all these things that make dealers great that they can use to, offer tires. And then they have the option of having, added value to the tires, as with DriveSure and with the added bundles that you can offer. So you just have to get that across to your customers. You have to change that perception. I think that we say that over and over again. Dealers have a battle of changing the perception that's out there in tires. It's one of them, right? And I think that,
for sure.
Again, competitive pricing, obviously that's important, but to me it's like it's getting all that value together and then explaining it to your customer. And that's going to go a long way to really making people go, hey, I need tires. Well, I'll just go to the dealership.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So Melissa, from a dealership's perspective, what are the key factors in successfully promoting tire sales as a part of a broader customer retention strategy? And how does data play a role in that?
Well, I think the biggest thing is advertise it, right? Like Joe said earlier, is customers don't even know that dealers have tires, right? So one of the big things I preach lately, and I've been on a soapbox about, is social media. Utilize it. Most everyone I know follows their local dealer on social media, and it's the main source of information today. Whether we like it or not, I'm guilty of it. It's how I get a lot of my information. And if you look at most of them, they're all variable side heavy, right? They're advertising the variable side over and over and over again and not service. And this goes for any service, not just tires, right? How do you get in front of, how do you expect to get in front of these customers if you're not promoting that service side and letting them know what services you offer and letting them know what your prices are? You know, on average, a customer buys a new car every 6 to 8 years, but they're getting those vehicles serviced twice a year at least. And so you have 12 to 16 times to make a loyal customer out of them in between car purchases. And if they're not coming to you for their service, their servicing, because they don't know what services you offer and they don't know that you are even competitive in pricing, what's to guarantee they're coming to you to purchase that next car versus another local dealer, because they have no loyalty? So you have to be transparent in your pricing, and you have to put that into effective promotions. Use your competitive pricing data in your promotions. Do the work for them and put them in your advertising. You have to educate the customer.
Yep. Yeah, so true. And we find the same thing. Is just those, it's just a constant communication on tires. We're fond of saying you cannot over communicate your tire abilities to your customer base, because it just needs to be communicated again and again and again. And so that when that moment of truth comes and the customer does need to make a decision about where they're going for tires, either because they need a new set because it's worn out, or because they suddenly have a damaged tire due to a road hazard, where they go can have a big impact on whether or not they show up back at the dealership again for that next scheduled maintenance service. So that awareness is so important.
I'll just add in on there too, because I think that's so true about, and I think that there's a great solution right here that, DriveSure offers around tires that helps dealers stand out, really. I think that when you can add extra value, which dealers can, and they have all these other qualities that help them stand out, and again, if they can put that into a message, they don't have to be the lowest price. They can be competitively priced, like we said before, up to that 20%. That's usually the cutoff point. Again, it might be different with some manufacturers, some brands. But if you can put all that together and then offer a superior experience, which also gives, extra services like DriveSure offers with their packages, you're going to stand out. And if you can get that to your customers, the choice, I think, would become a no-brainer for the customer. And so raising awareness, like you said, it just has to be done over and over again, to the point where it's the first place that your customer thinks of when they think of tires. And I think
idea
that some dealers do that really well, and some dealers can do a little bit better with that, for sure.
Yep, for sure. So I'd like to just pivot a little bit and talk about any insights you might have on mobile service. Mobile service is a hot topic recently within dealerships, and we're seeing more and more dealerships either dip their toe into the water with respect to mobile service or jump right in. And I'm wondering if you have any insights in terms of the role that pricing and competitive intelligence plays in the role of mobile service, as opposed to customers who are coming into the service department for service.
Yeah, this is one that we have done some studies on. You can speak to that, Melissa, about what we've done in terms of studies in the past on mobile service, and it is very interesting. And like you say, some dealers have dipped their toes into it. Some have been a little bit more reluctant to do it because there's an initial investment, and also you have already bills to pay. You have this overhead that you have to cover. So if you're adding on, equipment, vehicles to do this, it's quite specialized to be able to go out and work on these things. It's a lot of extra cost. And then your competitors, largely, there are some aftermarkets that do mobile repair as well. But, if you're just to look at, in our studies, I think, Melissa, when we were doing, studies on mobile repair, we were seeing a lot of, independent mobile repair people who maybe they're just working out of their house. Essentially, it's like their own business. They don't have the overhead of a brick and mortar location, so obviously they don't have as many bills to pay, and that does translate into them potentially being able to offer the same services for less. But I really think this comes back to what we've been talking about a lot today, is all the extra value that dealers have and the extra advantage that dealers have. So obviously, we can talk about this like endlessly about how dealers, they have the trained techs, they've got the OEM parts, they've got all these other things that they can offer, and that's great. And I think that's how they have to stand out. And again, they have to justify their prices that way. They got to know who the competition is, and maybe they got to know what the competition is offering, because maybe the competition isn't covering all the services that a dealer could. So right there, if you have something that you can offer that they don't offer, that's another way that you stand out. And then, you want to know that your pricing is still competitive on, if it's an oil change that you're going out to do, you want to be competitive there. Obviously, you want to be an attractive option. But the advantage, too, is that you have customers already. They're already in your dealership. If you can communicate this other option for them to have mobile service, I mean, if you're getting to them before all the competition there, and you're basically saying, hey, here's this added level of convenience that dealerships offer with mobile repair. I think if you approach it that way, if you're educating your current customers as this option, then again, they're going to be what you think or what they think of when they're considering mobile service. So that's an advantage that they can take advantage of. And I think also just understanding the market is important. You do have to know the competitors.
Sure.
You have to know what they're offering. So I think that there's a few things that dealers can do, and I think it is an interesting thing, and we'll see how this transition kind of goes as they start to offer this a little bit more. And I definitely think having intelligence on the market is absolutely essential on that, though, if you're considering it.
For sure. It certainly leverages the convenience aspect for giving dealer service to a customer through a mobile service.
Yeah.
The last topic I would like to touch on today is prepaid service bundles. So the way in which I define a prepaid service bundle is basically you can think of it as paying for 3 oil changes, 3 tire rotations, maybe 3 car washes, multi-point inspections, and that type of thing at once. And in our experience, when we look at the analytics around dealerships who are successful at selling prepaid service bundles, specifically on the service drive, it is incredibly effective in terms of driving customer retention. We see typically 85% or more of those customers returning in the subsequent 12 months at least once to redeem a maintenance service. And I'm curious, from a competitive intelligence standpoint, do you have any insights that might help dealerships in terms of how they market or price these prepaid service bundles vis-a-vis buying a single oil change or maintenance service, for example?
Well, the competitive data is going to give you the knowledge, right? The knowledge of knowing what your competition and the local market is offering. It's what we preach here every day. You need to have that knowledge. Know what your competition is offering. Know also what they're not offering. What are their prices? What are their discounts? It's going to give you the benchmarks you need to build these prepaid service packages and to make them look the most attractive to your customers against what the competition is offering. But also, it's giving you the tool, right? So to have the competitive data, it's giving you the tool to advertise these packages. And you can utilize, even Intelichek reports, you can utilize in your marketing, because customers are calling around too for pricing, right? Especially in this day and age. We talked about prices are skyrocketing. So you could use your competitive data to do the work for them. Put it in your advertisements and show them how you compare to your competition with these service bundles.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Well, great for that. Thank you very much for that insight. Before we wrap up here, is there anything else that you think that we should be discussing today that we haven't that would be helpful for our listeners?
We spoke earlier about customer service and the importance of it. Intelichek also offers the traditional mystery shopping performance evaluations to show you how your advisors are communicating with your customers. So that's always an option too with us.
Mm-hmm. Super.
Yeah. Anytime you have promotions going, I think that's a very effective tool as well. If you're trying to make sure that they're covering that. But speaking of promotions as well, and the whole messaging aspect, I also do want to kind of just let people know that with Intelichek reports, there's built-in tools that we call dare to compare tools to actually get these things created, and it's a very effective tool that we have dealers using, and it can be as simple as flyers, it can be as simple as mailers, it could be as as simple as just putting this on your service drive TVs and sharing it with your existing customers, and then getting it out there to the potential customers in your area. So there are a number of partners out there that are great to work with that help dealers stand out, get this messaging across there, have the intelligence that they need. So it's a lot for just a dealer to do on their own, but that's why there's companies like DriveSure and Intelichek out there that are there to help. So definitely encourage dealers to look at that.
Super, super. Joe and Melissa, if any of our listeners want to learn more about Intelichek or reach out and get a hold of you, what's the best way of doing that?
They can reach out to us by email on our website. You can link directly to us, or you can call us at 877-827-7273.
Super. And we'll include that information in the show notes, so it's convenient for our listeners to grab that. So Joel and Melissa, thanks very much for joining us. It's been great having you.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. Great to be here. Really appreciate it.
You've been listening to Retention Roadmap, navigating service success for new car dealerships. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.